Well, what's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Today, I have two guests with me, Jeffrey Castillo and Q from Big Effin Treez. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. And Jeff is from Highlonesome. I figured I didn't have to mention it, but for those of you who are new on the show, Jeff is from Highlonesome Cannabis over in Silver City. So thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Chad.
Hey, no problem, man. It's great having two guests in. Sometimes, we have this, but this season, I think we've had it a couple times this season. More than one guest. So it's great to have that. Get the two different perspectives too. Especially you guys are both micro producers, so that's great. But I won't let you. I won't spoil the news for anybody. I'll let you both introduce yourself. So we'll let ladies go first. Q, please go first, and tell everybody who you are, what you're about.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first, Chad. Sure. So my name is LaQuinia Chenault. A lot of people in the industry, they call me Q. So I am the owner and operator of Big Effin Treez. We are a connoisseur type brand. Love to be in the public a little bit. I don't know if you guys ever caught us on the cookies drop in 2023, but they caught your girl smoking, and it was not a good sight on the ABQ Journal. But hey, it is what it is. But known for cannagars and these great blunts that are on the market called Gorilla Fingers. Super excited to be on the show. Let's make something positive happen from this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, I remember that picture. I didn't know that you were the one in it.
I mean, I got my locks pulled back right now, Chad, but don't make me do a reenactment up in here.
Shake them dreads.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey, by all means, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Jeffrey Castillo here again from Highlonesome, Silver City, New Mexico, micro business. Just here to, check out the good conversations and, introduce us, myself and Q as co-chairs of the Micro Alliance. So, yeah, all the good business that comes out of that. Anybody wants to reach out, please reach out to myself or Q. That's what I got for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the intro. Jeff's been on here a couple times. As you guys, if some of you have been here for a minute, Jeff was on the last episode last season, and we had a little bit of a technical error at the end, and he kind of saved the show with his comedy sketch.
He
so,
saved your
yeah,
life.
he saved the show. It was funny. You got to check it out. Last season episode last year is pretty funny. Appreciate that, Jeff. It was a good one. I didn't even know what was going on until he added it. I was like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So appreciate you both being on the show with me. And like he said, we're going to talk about the Micro Alliance, how important that is, what you guys are up to with that. But first, let's individually dig into, both your businesses and stuff. That's the real, reason why I do this first part of the show is, to get you guys, to get everybody, to know who you both are, your business and all that. So this time I'll jump over to Jeff. And Jeff, go ahead and, tell them what Highlonesome's about, where it came from, even the name where you got it from is, an interesting story.
Yeah, no, sure. Highlonesome was created and manifested back when I was about 12 years old. It come to fruit, in the hemp industry. We got our hemp license and started growing cannabis. That gave us a good leg up to, build infrastructure from there, awaiting for the day that we are presently in this new industry. So yeah, we're on season 7 right now. Just plugging away, learning from our mistakes from previous years, seeing what everybody else is doing, and just staying in our own lane, pretty much. Trying to make our business just as thrive as much as everybody else wants theirs to thrive. But it all starts with the growers. It all starts with the plant. So yeah, we just, try to credit ourselves a little bit with, being the fruitation of it all. So
yeah,
100%.
And if some of you might recognize the name, the hash rosin that we've been having at certain dispensaries in the state, the flower came from Jeff from his farm. So if you guys notice on our packaging, it does say, grown by Highlonesome. You're doing a great job, man. Keep it up. Q, I'd love to go visit your grow someday. I've had your product, but I'd love to go check out grows. I'm a grower myself, for over a decade. So I love checking out grows, not just products. So, let me know whenever there's a good date. And I can go check that out too, because I get to go to Jeff's just about every year because we're pulling down for rosin. But, I love checking out, as many grows as I can because, they're all so unique.
Absolutely.
Not no one is the same. You know.
Absolutely. Come join me sometimes, Chad. Well, originally, so the concept of Big Effin Treez, it kind of developed from my time in the service. So if well, you can Google and look me up too, because I have a couple of books on the market right now. Grow Ops Manuscript to Wealth and 49 Laws of Cultivation. These books are do's and don'ts, but the first book, Grow Ops, it kind of gives a background and a deep dive in what I developed after I got out of the service. So, we didn't want to do pills. I know I didn't want to do pills. So I was looking for an alternative, solution to being able to sleep at night, the traumas of PTSD. And so, as kids, we're smoking cannabis and we don't even know that we're smoking a medicinal plant. And so, upon getting out of the military, trying to be placed on all type of cocktails, I was not having that. And so
Mhm.
soon after, I was like, you know what, let me get a naturopath doctor VA. Thank you. We're going to go off on our own path and try to find a better solution to combat things like PTSD, stress, anxiety. And so one of those solutions was definitely cannabis. I went from being a pothead, when I was younger, to understanding the medicinal value of
Yeah.
cannabis. And so that's when I merged the two into the company called Big Effin Treez. So it developed in Washington State. So I'm from Washington State, but I've lived in New Mexico now for 5 years. Lovely years in the land of enchantment. There's a joke that they say that this is the land of entrapment, but I guess that's an inside joke. But to me, this is a fantasy come true, because how many Black women do you actually see in this industry? Number one. So when you look up the statistics of me actually being a legal licensed operator in a state like New Mexico, if you look out, blow it out a little bit into a macro perspective, there's only 2% of Black women in this entire United States that actually hold a legal cannabis license. So just the thought of me having the license in general, it's like winning the lotto. And so when we win the lotto, we have to set ourselves apart. So I consider my brand more so of a connoisseur type thing, because I make unique products that are all handcrafted, hand rolled. We want to keep it like that. We want to, limit the amount of machines that touch our product, touch this plant. Plus, it's near and dear to me too, because I have some personal family members who have cancers and things like that. So medicinal cannabis is a huge thing in my family, and trying to promote that and be an advocate for that. And so basically, that's where Big Effin Treez concept came from.
Okay, that's cool. I like the background of the story and everything. And what branch of service were you in?
U.S. Army, man, come on, Chad. I'm in the
Hey, I gotta
Army,
ask you
man.
questions that
What?
people don't know.
Okay. Okay. I served in the U.S. Army. It was an interesting time. I loved everybody that I met. I went on a couple of deployments, hence the PTSD. Had to see a lot of things that normal civilians probably wouldn't see. So
Yeah.
upon returning, it does do something to you. And I wish there was better routes and programs that could coach young soldiers into how to come back and deal with society again. And then also to coming up with alternative solutions besides prescription drugs that are very harmful to our community, our veteran community. Suicide rates are even higher than last year. So we want to keep that channel open to understanding the alternatives and the power of cannabis.
Cool. I don't say that very often, but I did just now.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And thank you again for your service. Yeah, I was Army too, guys, as most of you know in the show. So I appreciate you sharing that and everything. Because yeah, the combat PTSD thing's no joke. The lack of sleep thing or being afraid to sleep thing, that shit's fucking real. And I live with that myself. I come from a long line of military people in my family. Goes actually all the way back to Civil War, if not even before. That's just what's recorded. So even my dad, my uncles, even my older sister, that's the reason why I'm here. She passed away because of prescription pills that she got through the VA. So once it came time for me, I did the same thing that you did. I said, nah, I'm gonna go a natural route, doc. And I said no to all the prescription pills. And what she told me was, okay, keep using the medical cannabis, I guess. And that was it. That was all I ever heard from about it. Which, to be honest, I'm grateful, because I know back in the day they were a little more strict about the cannabis use and stuff like that. But I do know after I got out, they did get a little more lenient and said, okay, if you're in a state where medical cannabis is legal or illegal, we're going to be hands off. Which, to be honest, is a night and day difference compared to what they wanted to do. Muscle relaxers, antidepressants, the cocktail of things, like you said.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's great that other veterans are reiterating that and also echoing the same thing. And there's a bunch of us in the industry And a lot of people don't realize it. And most veterans that I've met are growers, which is really interesting to me. Like some of them grow and have retail, but most of them that I know are growers. They love growing the plant. And I can't speak for everyone, like every veteran I know, but for yourself, what drew you to start growing the plant as a veteran?
And so that's fascinating that you bring that up, Chad. And thank you for your support, and thank you for your service too. I really hate to hear that about your sister. That's terrible. That's tragic. But that's why we're bringing this type of awareness. And so
Mhm.
to piggyback off your question, what brought me to the growing portion was my street pharmacist not only went up on my prices back in 2015, but also too I felt like maybe I should learn how to cultivate this plant so I can grow my own medicine. I want to see what's put in my medicine. And so I started off in the basement, deep water culture. For those who are growers, you know what deep water culture is. It's when you get a 5-gallon bucket, you do your thing with some nutrients and some waters and some air stones. It's basic. You could buy that system for under $15, have you some great cannabis somewhere in the closet, or if you're home growers, you know what to do. Well, I don't have to
Yeah.
give you the recipe, but it's a therapeutic thing too. Like it became therapeutic, Chad. Like seeing the plant grow, taking care of something. It's just like oh, let me bring a good reference up. It's just like when prisoners get a cat to take care of the cat during their sentence, because it helps them with friendliness, with social anxieties and things of that nature, and then also to taking care of something that makes them human like, so they don't treat them like animals in prison. But moral
Yeah.
of the story is it's kind of like that. It's therapeutic. It's just like some veterans get to go golfing, horseback riding, flying drones. We have to get that therapeutic need to relax, because most of the time sometimes we can be in fight or flight mode, and we want to get out of those modes. We want to be able to be on zen, so everybody's cool. You know what I'm saying, Chad?
Yeah. There's that great saying that just because a man is at peace doesn't mean he doesn't know war.
Right.
It's just because we're at peace doesn't mean we're not always at war with ourselves and everything too as well. So it's great that you bring that up, and it is very therapeutic. And I was thinking about this while you spoke. I was like, yeah, it's true, because being in leadership roles, you had soldiers that you had to worry about, had to take care of. Like these were people you had to go and check their barracks. It's like everything short of wiping their ass essentially. Is kind of what they had us doing sometimes. You had to go
Facts.
in. And I remember even myself, private days, getting the first sergeant coming in doing the line on top of the fridge, and it was dirty, and I got in trouble, and I was like, you got to be shitting me, I didn't even think of
Barrack
that.
inspections, making
Yeah.
sure
Oh.
everybody had a DWI, ensuring everybody's pack was right before we hopped a flight. It was not a game. It was not a joke. And then,
Hmm.
like, one of my most stressful jobs that I had to hold while I was in the Army was actually being a logistician, which you go
Oh,
to
sure.
S4. So, what S4 does is we're responsible for every piece of equipment, every person, every weapon, everything that the Army owns. We were responsible for it. We had to go do inspections on it. So, when the CCD comes to us, I totally understand where they come from, where they have that, that blueprint, that setup sheet where it's like, oh, you got to knock this, and off, because it's basically that's how you account for what you're doing. And
Yeah.
so, it was a stressful job, very, very stressful job. I think my second most stressful job was working at Amazon as a security supervisor, being in charge of like 40 people in downtown Seattle. That taught me a lot on how to maneuver and how to delegate. You mentioned being a leader. In order to be a leader, first you have to be led. We understand that when you first join the military, you are a soldier. Like you start off as nothing, like they build you and mold you into what they want to be, what they want you to be, which is a U.S. soldier. But then afterwards, once you prove yourself, once you show that you're efficient in your ways, they start to mold you into a leader. And when
Yeah.
you gain those skills from the Army, it's hard to turn that off when you come back into the civilian world. So, the antics behind Big Effin Treez too is mostly kind of militant too, because it's about a standard. It's not
Yeah.
we just can't put anything in the market. We have to put the best in the market. And so, like, as I
Gotcha.
sit and I see Jeffrey's Highlonesome on his chest, bro, I just discovered one of your stickers you gave me glows in the dark. You should have warned me about that, Jeffrey. I didn't know this sticker glowed in the dark, bro. Like, I was like, what is going? And I was like, hi, what is like, Jeff? It was like boom, like right there on the water bottle. I was like, bro, you gotta warn me when you do stuff like that. Sorry, you guys, I got
You-
distracted because I had to mention his glow in the dark sticker he gave me. You guys, he's got good merch. He's got great merch. But yeah, back to it with the list. I had to say that, man, because I was like, Jeffrey's Highlonesome. I gotta tell him about himself, and I'm gonna tell you about yourself on the podcast, bro. Like, you gotta warn people about that before you give that to them. I'm for real. You know, you hear the story of the vet over here, bro. You gotta warn people. You know?
Oh, he's great at marketing. I'll tell him that. I got a Highlonesome sticker on the front of my truck that I didn't know was there for a couple weeks.
Gosh, yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry we got thrown off a little bit with the Highlonesome gear, but like, yeah, bro, I had to tell you about yourself on Chad stuff. But yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
Chad,
funny.
yes, marketing.
Nope.
Where were we? Where were we, Chad? Where were we?
Well,
before
I actually wanted to ask you this question, before we,
Yeah.
jump on to Jeff's story and everything. What made you want to come to New Mexico? You mentioned, Washington and this and that, and that's where you're from originally, right?
Yeah. Not
Okay.
originally, man. It's just I got out of
Okay.
the military there, stayed
Okay.
there, learned my craft from some of the greatest growers in Washington, and got to be a part of some good functions up there when it came to medical. So what made me come to New Mexico? First and foremost, I had to do my research. I knew I wanted to be legal in this industry. In Washington State, that was completely out of the game. You had to have at least $15 million to get even enter into Washington State's legal cannabis market. And this is because, unlike New Mexico, in Washington State, you own your license. That means you could pass this down to your children or put it in a trust or something that creates generational wealth. It's a equity. It's basically equity that you own in Washington State compared to in New Mexico, you only lease it, and we lease it from the state, as I understand.
Yeah.
And so also understand too that that's where CCD gets some of their budget from. That's what I was in understanding with today. But
Yeah.
as far as coming down to New Mexico, seen the blueprints, seen all the states that were starting to go recreational, what was affordable, what was doable, and most importantly, where could I also thrive? Thrive meaning since I had already been in Washington State, it had already been legal since 1998. So the cannabis game in Washington State is like futuristic. So I knew I had to find something, a state that would accommodate what I was looking for, and most importantly, would allow me to start from the ground up, meaning purchase my own land and try to do it that way. Because I was, when I first did the recon mission here, is the rent was very expensive. I knew being in the city would not be a longevity thing. It would not be realistic because let's face this. When this market first started, you thought you were going to make millions of dollars. Wrong answer if you were thinking that.
Yeah.
First and foremost, your operating costs would have exceeded your budget if you even had $100,000. So I knew from right then and there that I wanted to purchase land as soon as I got to New Mexico. I felt like it was a great environment. I was tired of the snow, you guys, like tired of the snow, tired of the rain. My bones hurt. I'm a combat vet. My bones hurt. Okay. Like, 100% out of there. You hear me, Chad? You know what that means. 100% out of there. Bones creaking. No. So I wanted to find something that was warm too, something where I could get to California faster, see my family that's closer in Texas. Like it was a no-brainer for me. I was like, New Mexico, that's where it's going to be. Plus, when I first came here, you guys, it was an offering of reciprocity. At the time, they were doing medical cards that were considered reciprocity. So when I was a medical cannabis patient in Washington State, I came down here, and the first place I went to was Pure Life because that's where the Airbnb was. And we went over to Pure Life, and they accepted my medical card, and I was like, "That's the beginning of something good right here." And it was just that simple reciprocity right there. I was like, "I think I'm gonna like it here." And then when I moved here, the sun overpowered me, Chad. I was like sun sick. It was like getting off a flight to Balad, bro. I was like, what is going on? Why is the sun beaming on me like this? Why do I have a heat rash? Like it was, I had to adapt. But 5 years later, I've adapted. Of course, my business is thriving here. I want to take the opportunity to be grateful for the New Mexico Cannabis Control Division, the New Mexico Cannabis Vision that was shared in the beginning to even make this possible. Because if it wasn't possible, I wouldn't have a legal license and people wouldn't see me. My culture wouldn't see me. And representation matters for me. And so when
100%.
somebody sees a Black woman tearing up the market, doing great collaborations, doing things that help with pushing the mission forward, especially with the little people, the little guys, the small business like us, the people in the trenches who grind hard every day. If you don't want it, don't enter this cannabis industry. And I knew I wanted it. And so that's how I came to New Mexico.
That's dope. And I like asking people that from out of state and everything because on the advocacy side, I've been in New Mexico's industry for like 12, 13 years. And so I was on the advocacy side and we helped change and mold a lot of these laws. So one thing that we really pushed for was the micro businesses, and reciprocity was another huge one that we
Yeah.
really wanted to ensure that was going to be there. Because what we did is in 2018, around that time, we went to change the medical cannabis laws because they were still stuck on the original language. It was terrible. We couldn't even share cannabis with another patient. That's how strict it was. And like we couldn't like, gift anybody or, transfer it without, financial consideration to someone else back in the day either. It was actually illegal and stuff. And they actually like would enforce it and take your card away kind of stuff. Like it was really strict. And so in 2018, we changed that. And I've always been curious to see like what really draws people to New Mexico sometimes. And it's great to hear stuff like that because you directly benefited. And to be honest, it changed your whole mindset on New Mexico and the way things are because we decided to go a total different route and kind of open it up a little bit more. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because that means that we're on the right track. When other people from other places acknowledge that and kind of notice it too, that means we're on the right track, and I'm glad to hear that. But don't get me wrong, we
But
have our problem.
but also too, Chad, you got to keep in mind when newer people with different perspectives come into this state, especially when it's positive. Like I came here and look, now I'm a co-chair of a micro alliance. You had me on your show, obviously, because there's good information. I've learned a lot through this cannabis industry being from somewhere else. And when I take that now, and Chad, like the military takes you everywhere around the world. I've been around this world. So it's not just the Washington State education. I'm a people person. So when you're a people person, you naturally learn a lot of things from people in different cultures. You cannot stay narrow-minded. You have to open yourself to a idea of people who necessarily are not where you're from. You have to open your mind to learning from them and adapting to some of the ideas, but because it can make a state greater. Other people
Yeah.
coming in and influencing this market, it makes it greater. Just like there was never blunts here on the market. My culture brought blunts to this recreational market. Now look at it.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, culture is so good. And the culture that's here in New Mexico, I love it. That's why I ain't left yet. I love it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Only thing I haven't done yet is get on that balloon, bro, and go snowboarding because I'm not breaking no ankles. My knees are messed up, bro. I'm not, I haven't gone snowboarding yet. And I haven't been on a hot air balloon. But the rest of New Mexico, hidden gem. There's so much potential here. It should be like the land of treasures, low key, but moral of the story is, Chad, like being from other places does not take away from the mouths of people in New Mexico. If anything, it should help people want to collaborate and enrich the ideas that are learned from other people. So that way this place can thrive. Like every time you see New Mexico on social media, they're trying to make cracks on it, but they don't live here. We live here. We understand, like, yeah, it may be one of the top dangerous cities and bad crime roads, but this place, cannabis can change all of that. Cannabis has began to change all that. That's how they're getting this funding to fix the roads and stuff like that from the cannabis excise tax. The new bill that was introduced in Albuquerque where certain families get $700 a month that are low income, that came from the cannabis excise taxes. And so for us to understand the power of collaboration and the power of the dollar can float, even further if we could just collaborate and stay focused on one mission, which is to take New Mexico out of a certain type of image. There's plenty to do here. The cannabis here is lit. Okay. If I'm here, it's obviously lit. If Jeff's here, it's obviously lit. If your brand's here, it's obviously lit. You're authentic. It makes you stand apart regardless. So
Yeah, and
keep
that's the
that
thing
in
New
mind.
Mexico is. Yeah, and the reason why I ask the people that come here is because usually New Mexico gets the bad rap, and I'm like, well, what brought you here? What's the reason that you decided to go here versus Colorado, Oklahoma, any other place. Like, and some people don't even realize we're a state. And that's one thing that we struggle with here in New Mexico when we talk to other people from other states is when we go visit. Sometimes they realize we exist. Like, that's a state. It's like, yeah, it's the 47th. But it's a struggle. And when I lived in Hawaii, it was the same damn thing. And like people
Yeah.
thought that Hawaii was a different place too. So I was like, I can't get away from this. But it is great to have people from outside perspectives. And honestly, throughout the years during the medical, we were looking at the other states and what they were doing. And I've actually been to Washington several times. My best friend lives there, so I go and visit, just about every year. So I've been checking out that market for years now.
Yeah, it's
And one
lit.
of the brands that I really liked smoking back in the day was it Fat Panda? Yeah, Fat Panda. No, yeah, Fat Panda.
You're
Was one.
right. It's Fat Panda because like there's a one specific store that always branded Fat Panda. I think their name's Zips, right? So like
Mhm.
a lot of business models that I see in New Mexico, like when they begin to open up multiple chains in their retail, it kind of reminds me of the blueprint that they did at this dispensary called Zips in Washington State. If you guys are not familiar with that blueprint, study that blueprint. That's how they're having multiple retail stores open up, and they open up 2 stores in 1 year and then they multiply the next year. So just, I like blueprints. I'm somebody who likes blueprints, and it's a nice one in New Mexico. And I feel as though New Mexico has a lot of potential, Chad. It's a lot of potential here.
Oh yeah, we're only in year 3. Usually by year 5 is when the market's usually kind of mature. So we
Oh,
still have some time for our mature date, but we're kind of on a sped up timeline, as well too. Because of the experience from other states that have come here, and the experiences that we had before, it's kind of set us on a quicker timeline, versus before, when Washington and Colorado legalized. The guys were like, okay, how do we go about this adult use thing? And they were kind of figuring it out. Everyone makes mistakes when they're doing it. And then we kind of picked up on that. We're saying, okay, we like this and this and this, but for New Mexico, we should try this. And that's kind of where we ended up with, what we have. And to be honest, I think it's, kind of on the right track. And maybe some other states can pick it up because our next conversation, we're kind of going to, dig into that too. And of course, it talks about production. You guys are production. But I just want to say thank you so much for sharing with me. But I want to get over to Jeff too, so that way he can get to talking about his company as well. Because you and I can talk all day, the veteran stuff and the cannabis
facts.
stuff. So yeah, let's jump over to Jeff. Jeffrey, please. I've always wanted to ask you this. What made you want to get into the hemp industry in the first place, or even cannabis industry in the first? Like, what wanted you to do this? Because you don't come from really the cannabis background. You have a different business outside of this too. To me, it kind of feels more like a hobby. And because have the other business that really helps out. So what really made you decide this?
Yeah, no, definitely. I actually, in the medical days, I held my personal production license.
Hmm.
So with doing that, I was able to do a good build out of a pretty decent little indoor, little setup, where I had my bedroom, my flower room, and a dry room. Um, and we got pretty good at it. I mean, it was working pretty well. Of course, with anything new, um, there's learning curves on on the growing side. Building it out was pretty easy for me because that's what I do is construction, specifically a tile guy. But in all phases of construction, we're around everything. But yeah, no, just starting from there, we were like 3 years into maybe 3 years of doing personal production at a micro scale, kind of a good little setup, indoor setup, and we just decided, hey, um, let's try this hemp thing out. It went federally legal. The New Mexico came up with their program. We joined in with that, with along with I think it was total max. The first year was about 400 other producers in New Mexico that went the hemp route. I think currently, right now, we're sitting at 2 producers. Um, so yeah, no, just the love of the plant. Manifesting this since I was a kid. I Back to your question on how High Lonesome was named. Well, I grew up on High Lonesome Street, and that's where we are. So back in the day when I was a kid, I would
Oh,
grow in the creek. We have a live creek on the other side of the fence of the farm. So I was 12 years old. I threw some seeds in, like about 100 seeds into one whole size, we had horses here. So we mixed in some manure and screened out the dirt so it was really fine, and threw 100 seeds in one little spot. And yeah, they bloomed. They bloomed, and
Okay,
it was choking
that's cool,
everybody
man.
out. The males started pollinating the females, all in this 100 plants all in one bush.
Had a gang
Uh,
of seeds, man. You were a geneticist back then, didn't even know it.
I didn't even know what I was doing back then. I was pulling leaves off every day and putting them in the microwave and going and smoking them, just to dry them out.
Trying to get high, bro. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
man, yeah, the things that we all try when we first started to learn how to grow, huh?
Facts.
So here where the farm is currently at on the property, my grandfather used to have a garden on exactly where my raised beds are. And as a kid, I would sit in the back, of the house, and I'd be smoking something, and my grandfather would be there all afternoon tending to the garden. And after he'd leave, I'd be like, man, one day I'm gonna put some seeds in that garden. I'm gonna grow some pot in that garden one of these days. And it just from there just really
Got it,
just
bro.
manifested itself. I mean, even before we had our hemp license or our rec license, when I was doing my home grow, we called my Instagram name Highlonesome Green Thumbs. I'd never even had permission from my dad to do this hemp or the cannabis yet by that time. So all of it just, I don't know, fell into place. And the brand's working pretty good. Highlonesome's a good name. Everybody loves it. Um, just the street where we're at. I could have
That's
named
funny,
it
man.
uh, Louisiana if I was on Louisiana Street. So,
Right, sure. I grew up on a street called Cuba, so it's like, like, well, that's confusing because of Cuba, New Mexico.
oh, yeah.
So, but no, that's a cool name, that you grew up on, and so it really, really, meshes with your brand and everything like that, and watching your brand grow. And I mean, I smoke your gorditas at the lounge when I go. I know for sure. It's one of the things
Oh
that
yeah.
I, really do smoke when I go there. It's either a gordita or a dab of some sort. Because their product's changing, which is good. So
Yeah.
it's good to try the things, but I am always getting those gorditas because it's great for a session. It's not just like a little joint; it's a big ass joint, and especially when I go to the lounge because I'm there with a lot of people, it's great to pass around because we pass those little ones around. It goes around like maybe once.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
done.
Chad, you got to try our Goliaths, man. They're handcrafted canagars. Like, it's major, man. This thing is huge. It's a 10 grammer. We call it Goliath the 10 grammer, man. It takes you like 3 or 4 hours to smoke it. So 420 actually has our 7 grammars, but we got a big monster out there. He's the Goliath 10 grammer. Excellent smoke. Good to have. Dropping in some really good stores pretty soon. Only in select locations because 2 are never alike. So it's a specialty item. It's a connoisseur item. And you got to try it, man. You know what? I got to hook you up with something since you let me come on this show and talk about the Micro Alliance, which we need to, Jeffrey. We need to talk a
Yeah,
little bit about the
Yeah.
Micro
Yeah.
Alliance.
I'll come
yeah, yeah,
down
yeah.
to
We'll
your
get to that. I just want to
Goliath,
get
though.
through
It took me
Jeffrey's story.
3 days.
Yeah, my bad, Jeff. Oh, we still on Jeffrey's story. Go ahead,
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
Jeff.
yeah. I
no,
want to
no,
get through
no.
Jeffrey's story
I was
first.
gonna
Yeah, yeah.
say it took me 3 days to smoke that Goliath.
Come
That
on, bro. 3
yeah,
days.
yeah. No,
Yes.
I had to put it out, and then the
Yeah.
next day I did it again, put it out, and it was still going 3 days later.
But look, it's great though, because if you have it by yourself, you can do that. But if you have it with a group of people and take it to a party, you got something. It's lit. It's the party teaser right there.
Nice. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that I like to see on the markets too is stuff for parties. Like they have
Oh yeah.
stuff for parties for everything else. For like alcohol and stuff like that. Why not cannabis? Because we could celebrate too with it. Why not with the big doobie? When I was up in Albuquerque, I had a hash hole and I shared it with some of my cousins and stuff when I was at a family event. So it was great. It was fun stuff like that. Creates memories and too. So yeah, I'll have to check that out. Whenever you get a chance. But let's finish out this Jeffrey conversation. I want to hear more about what's going on now. What do you got going on this year, Jeff? What do you got growing? What do you got going on? What are your plans?
Yeah, all new genetics this year. I try not to stay stuck on anything too crazy, and keeping our stable. But yeah, all new genetics this year. Um, gonna be the farm's doing great. Like I said, I've been doing this for 7 seasons in this property, playing with the plant, and every year is different. You'll have the year of the aphids, you'll have the year of the caterpillars, the year of the hailstorms that break everything,
Don't
the
forget
the,
about the wind, Jeff. Don't forget
the
about those
wind,
windstorms.
the year of no rain at all. Yeah.
Those are the
But yeah,
worst.
yeah, it's been doing great. We have no issues. Anything past, we've learned from our mistakes. Yeah, you guys got to come check it out whenever you're in town. Everything's starting to bloom right now, so I'd give it the end of this month. It's going to be pretty good, but come October, it's going to be heavy and probably pretty droopy. We got trellises more than we've ever in any past years because we learned. Well, those buds get heavy, branches start going over on top
Snaps,
of each
snaps, bamboo
other,
sticks.
or
Yeah.
they're untangling things to put it in the freezer or hang it in the dry rooms. So yeah, no, High Lonesome is kicking ass this year.
Dope, man. I'm glad to hear that. We'll be down there at some point, checking microscopes and stuff, checking out. We want to wash and everything like that
Yep.
for sure. We all come together with it, because that's how we come up with the cool stuff, man. So that's great to hear. And Q, and I'd love to hear what you have in your growing stuff going on right now too.
Oh, sweet, man. I got a couple of new strains coming out. I'm super excited. So Big Effin Treez, like we're behind it all too. We are geneticists. So like I have a couple of cool strains that were bred particularly from a cut called UW Purple. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that cut, but it's super popular in the state of Washington. It was developed by a University of Washington student. Some low key type stuff, and I happened to get my hands on some while I was up there. So took those genetics, crossed it with some land racers. I like to be in the Caribbeans a lot. If you guys haven't checked out my Instagram at Big Effin Treez, you just seen last year we took a trip to Jamaica. I love all new types of genetics, so got some really nice hard hitters coming out pretty soon. It's looking nice. The garden's looking nice. Can't complain, but we are preparing for these next couple of days of windstorms. I don't know if if the operators have checked their cameras yet, but you've seen what I've seen, and so we are prepping for the wind. And those girls are looking so lovely in the garden. Every time the cannabis field starts to bloom out there, it's just a sight to see. I mean, it's great footage, especially for marketing for smaller guys like us. Make sure you amp up your marketing when it comes to your product. And what I mean by marketing, I just simply mean taking your camera, your iPhone, your Android, and recording some content with your beautiful buds, your flowers, putting your work out there on IG so people can see, so your brand can grow. But yes, we got some good camera shots of what we got growing out in the field this year. Super excited.
Awesome. Well, before we move on to our next conversation and everything, let's talk about the Micro Alliance, because this is, the kind of the elephant in the room we all been wanted to talk about. I just wanted to get you guys' story, and Q, you're new to the show, so you had a lot to share with us. So thank you so much for that. So let's go on with the Micro Alliance. Where did this come from, and where did it start, and what you guys are about?
Jeff, go ahead.
I'll take it away. Well, Micro Alliance, was formed. There was a meeting that, remember when me and you went up to the session, Chad, and we were fighting for the drive-throughs. Well, I got into a meeting with the director and superintendent and the ex executive director from the chamber. We had a meeting. I had to lose something for that session so they could get something on their end, which brought us all into a meeting the next interim. So we had a meeting with the CCD. Q was there. We had a few other micros. Had a great meeting with just micro producers, getting our opinions out to them, and after that, the chamber wanted to go ahead and create an alliance for us. So we did that. We ran with it for about a year and a half. We're on almost our second year of running with it. Creating the farmers market along with that. So farmers market is where we've been trying to get a retailer to host us so micro producers could come out, set up, do our face to face with customers coming in, showing product, and of course, helping micros get out there. So yeah, that's pretty much where we started.
And part two of it is it's kind of starting as a grassroots effort to bring together, smaller craft batch growers, manufacturers, people who really have some talent and skill that need to be on shelves but don't necessarily know how to put themselves out there, because a lot of times, you need a marketing strategy, you need a sales plan, there's a lot of things that you need in order to, understand how to put yourself on a product shelf. And so sometimes that can lack with our smaller business individuals who haven't had that education, or been privy to be around a group as the people that are in this this podcast right now. And so our efforts are to try to bring us all together, the small business, to have one voice. So when there's things like these hearings and things that have to do with CCD that can affect small business, we come together as a unified voice. That's what the Micro Alliance is based upon as well, having that voice as a whole, and also too fighting for the smaller guys, which are us. We're the small business, we are the backbone. In the military, that's what we call non-commissioned officers. We call them NCOs. Those are the people that Chad was talking about earlier, who we have to be in charge of people, and that's some serious stuff. But being a backbone, you don't necessarily get the oh, we're the winners, or oh, we created this. No, you put in that groundwork, you put in that work that builds companies that turn into companies that could potentially be on Fortune 500s, or top business in Albuquerque, or top business in this county. Like, it's just about bringing us all together, and most importantly, seeing those brands that has what it takes. Because Jeff, he's one of the hardest working people I know besides myself, and that's saying a lot. And so, we want to look for brands that are like that as well. They want to get their brands on shelves, that are willing to learn, willing to be educated, and most importantly, that can stay compliant. We want to make sure that we have brands that are compliant, because in order to win in this game, you have to stay compliant, you guys. And it could be hard, but it's not impossible, because we're doing it.
Yeah. And especially, throughout time, we with us in the future needing a push for deregulation, the only thing we can do is just follow the rules and laws until we can change them accordingly.
Right.
So that way we can make this easier for everybody to operate, because there's a lot of fat that we can trim in the industry. Like a lot of stuff that we really don't need to be doing that they can just take out. But until then, we still have to keep doing it. So that's a good point there. And I thank you both for having this alliance and stuff like that, because back in the day, in the medical days, there was like only one alliance, and it was really hard trying to do everything. And now these other ones are popping up here and there, and it's great to see that a bunch of people are figuring out that you can fight and your voice does matter, especially here in places like New Mexico, because you can lose elections very easily here in New Mexico because of our population being so small and our government being so accessible. That's one of the benefits I've heard people tell me. That I came from California. If I wanted to meet with my representative, it would not be as easy as it was here in New Mexico. I just showed up to their office and they were there, and I sat down with them and had a really good conversation. I'm like, well, that's great to hear. But when it comes down to showing up to hearings, legislative stuff, things that are important that will change rules and laws in the future, that is the important stuff, and people need to know that we have to show up to those too. And groups like yourself really help with that, because and I even heard it over at the legislature. This is the backbone of our industry, are the micros, the smaller businesses. I mean, our governor, even when we started dealing with like the border patrol seizures, she was pretty much on the phone with the federal government, like, look, I have a bunch, she called them baby businesses, but she meant micro businesses, that are getting pretty much murked because of all of this. Like, if you're a micro business and you're starting out, getting a seizure at the border check, that could be like an end game for you, because you could lose thousands upon thousands of dollars of product and never get it back. And you'll have to figure it out, and that's happened, unfortunately. So that it is a real concern. So it's great that our government is kind of on our side. Don't get me wrong, not every single one in our government is, but for the most part, our government has our side and our back on that. But with groups like yourself, it really backs that up, because you guys can show up and say, no, this is really what the industry wants and needs. Look at the people behind me, what they have to say about it and everything. So it's great, and you guys are filling in a spot that's really needed, that the micro stuff, and then doing the farmers markets and stuff, because that's something that you don't see in every state, like a farmers market kind of style thing. And even lounges in general, you don't see that in every state either. That's something that's kind of like a newer-ish thing with the states that are coming online. And I'm glad to see it. It gives us that opportunity, and you guys have capitalized on it. So thank you so much. So do you guys have an Instagram or a Facebook for the alliance or anything like that?
It's in the works. It's in the
Okay.
works. For right now, you can just reach out to us on our business links, Big Effin Treez and at Highlonesome Cannabis. That's where you can find us at. Until we can set up something as far as the social media, shadow banning and people, really hating and getting your account like gone. That is real, you guys. That is
Yeah.
so real. So bear with us as we work, but we do have a email that we can shoot over to Chad, and he can shoot that out. And we do have contact information where you can get in contact with us as well. And I wanted to add this: the only reason why Jeffrey Castillo and I are actually, have formed together is because of Ben Linginger. I did not know Jeffrey before Ben introduced me to him, and Ben knows how I am with a lot of people, so. He's seen something that could work. He merged us together. Ever since then, we've been raising a fit and making some noise. And Jeffrey, thanks for backing me up when I need to be backed up, and letting me know stuff when I need to when I need to know things. So that's the power of teaming up and doing collaborations. Didn't know Jeffrey from Adam, didn't know he was from the South and had such a big influence. It's just like he didn't know me until, he knew me, and I'm on the stage speaking, at some SWAS event. So it's like that, so, don't take advantage of the little things that happen and the connections that can be made to make powerful connections, because we're trying to push agendas that are going to require all of us to be on the same page. And so,
Yeah.
thanks, Chad, for putting us in the room and letting us have this time to explain that to people. And please do not forget, operators, to put in your public comments. That is very, very important. We just can't have a visual or audio. We have to have things written down and move as one.
100%. And with that being said, next week on the in 2 weeks, on the 26th, I'm going to be hosting a Zoom meeting with a bunch of operators, whoever wants to join us. We're going to go over the rules and kind of hear the ideas, what other operators have seen themselves. We'll go over it, and we'll kind of game plan for the following week when the rules hearing for here in New Mexico is going to be. It'll be in Santa Fe. I told you guys about it last week, but throughout the whole time until the rules hearing, I'm going to be sharing it pretty much every day on my profile. I'm especially going to be sharing that pre-rules hearing, Zoom hearing meeting that we're going to have. I'd love to have you guys on there too as well. I mean, we need to hear from as many micros as possible, and making sure that we're all on the same page. And well, I want to say the same page, but we're all understanding of what's going on with the rules and stuff and how they could affect us is going to be very, very crucial. So that way we go in and we say the right things. And I wouldn't say we say the same things all the time, which isn't a bad thing because it reiterates how bad it is, but it mutes the other messages that need to get out there. So, it gives us an opportunity to strategize. Okay, I'll spend time on this. You guys can spend time on that, blah, 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 because we only get like 2 minutes when we're up there. When you get to type, it's as long as they let you. But when you're up there, you only get about 2 minutes, if that. And depending how many people are there, it could be less. So you have a very short amount of time, and you want to make your point clear. So, that's one thing I want to remind everybody too. When we go up there, you have a very limited amount of time. This is on, I believe, September the 3rd, I think is when the hearing is going to be. Yes, it's going to be September 3rd. I'm gonna have to figure out what we're going to do with the show because that's on Wednesday. I'm going to be up in Santa Fe. Gino and I have been talking some stuff, so we'll figure it out. But if you guys could, September 3rd is going to be the rules hearing. This is very important. I went through a bunch of them last episode, pretty much all the ones that were good, bad, and this and that. So go ahead and go watch that if you guys haven't, or if you want to go read the rules. I think Gino left the link there. I'm not sure. He did. So he left the link to the rules and everything. You guys can read it there. But please, this is very, very important. Like they were saying, don't just leave a public comment in text. Show up and say it in person. Say it with your chest. And say it like you mean it, because this industry is your livelihood. You guys have to fight for what you believe in and for your industry. This isn't going to fix itself. This isn't a self-healing wound or something like that. When there's an issue or when something's changed, we have to be the ones that change it. The days of me and Jeffrey and Doug Dalton going to Santa Fe and saving drive-throughs with just 3 people. Those days are limited, and to be honest, that was luck. That was pure dumb luck that happened in the first place, that we got it saved. So that's not always going to be the case, and we get more chances to save stuff when we do this. So I thank you both for your advocacy, and I thank you so much for joining me on the show today. But we're going to jump off into the next topics that we have, because this is going to be a little bit of a longer episode. So thank you so much again. Guys, go ahead and give them a follow on the respective pages. I'm sure through time they'll get the other pages going and everything like that. But yeah, give them a follow. Jeff grows some really good stuff. I've had Q's a couple of her products, not a lot, but I'm looking forward to try more in the future. Being in different parts of the state, it's kind of hard to get products sometimes, which is that damn border check. So
Sheesh.
I look forward to yeah, I know. I look forward to it and everything. So without further ado, let's jump on to the next topic. And now this one, I'm sure you guys are gonna, have a lot of say in and everything, and you might enjoy the conversation. Now, this has to deal with producing. So in states like Michigan, Colorado, California, Oregon. I'm not too sure about Washington. I wasn't really looking too much about, the saturation of product over there. And surprisingly, more of those jurisdictions over there do allow cannabis sales than like Colorado and California. It's about almost 60%. Not quite 100, but 60% is a lot damn better. So I feel like the saturation isn't as bad because there's more availability to sell it. You can't, it's kind of hard to sell all the weed you have when you're only selling it in like very small particular places. So it makes it like Colorado and California, only 30% of those cities, like in the states, allow cannabis sales in the first place. It's like 30 to 40%. And so that creates a lot of issues, especially, traditional market on the places that don't have it. Like, let's say during the medical days when I lived in Alamogordo, I had 2 options: face the border check, come here to Las Cruces, or go to Ruidoso and drive up the mountain and dodge the deer and the elk to get my cannabis. There was no options around me whatsoever. That was it. That's all I had. So in that case, what did I do? I relied on the traditional market quite a bit, and myself with my personal production license. That's what really happens when these states decide to close licensing or be very limited with them. But what they also decided to do is, even here in New Mexico, allow overproduction. People to just grow all kinds of cannabis. And if a lot of people remember Oklahoma actually didn't have a plant count whatsoever. If you wanted to grow 1,000,000 plants, have at it. You can grow 1,000,000 plants. And to be honest, that caused a lot of issues in Oklahoma because of that. The over saturation of the product, which leaked over here to New Mexico too. Once we went adult use as well into other states too. So we kind of felt some of those effects. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because these states that have overproduction, they're seeing issues like us. An overabundance of lower grade product that's being mass produced, and it's at a very low price, which then prices really good growers out of the market sometimes, or really good people that should stay there. It kind of prices them out. It's hard. It's really hard to compete. When you're racing to the bottom. And the ones that do survive, but by God, you guys are some damn soldiers. I'll give my hats off to you. The ones that sticking around, because that's what's happening here in New Mexico. Is it's a race to the bottom, and we see that, and it happened very quickly. The prices dropped here very very quickly in New Mexico. When the adult sales first started, I think pounds. I saw like one of the high grade ones go for like 4,000, and I kind of laughed at it. I was like, "You're crazy." And went anywhere down to like $1,200 was a little more reasonable. But those prices that we saw at the beginning of the 4,000 ones, it was like for the first 2 weeks, and you never saw that again. And like it started to do that whole decline thing. And the reason why is because at the time, and Jeff and I actually went over these numbers the other day when we went through the rules. We only had 8,000 plants. That was the max you can get. And then you can go in increments, I think, of 500, and you can get up to 10,000 plants. And that was it. Well, someone sued the state and won. Ultra Health. They sued the state and won, and the plant count went from that to I think like 20,000 where it is today. But now we have even places that have 54,000 plants. So it didn't stop there. It kind of kept going because they just kind of allowed it, and because the state got sued and lost, because at the time our supply and demand was kind of jacked up, they lost, and now they were afraid to get sued again. And I'm like, well, let them sue, because this time the supply and demand is nothing what it was when you guys first did that, because in the Cannabis Regulation Act, the CCD does have the power to change the plant counts for the bigger guys, not the smaller guys. The smaller guys are protected by law. They do have that authority, and they haven't done it since 2022 or 2023. They haven't put out like a little study thing on like the plant counts, because it's supposed to go off like a national number. They're supposed to look at our demand and all that, and then adjust the plant counts to accordingly. So here in New Mexico, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, because I'm in the state I'm operating, so I can tell you the reason why we are oversaturated. So these plants, we have too many in the state. And to be honest, we're in a desert. So we don't have a lot of water to start with. So when you give people too many plants, that causes a lot of issues elsewhere. And then we ran into the issue this year with the state engineering office when it came to water hauling. That was another big issue that we dealt with. And that's because a lot of places are overproducing. And so they're saying, oh, okay, we're going to have to crack down somewhere. Where can we crack down? Oh, these guys aren't doing this right technically. We're going to crack down on that. And unfortunately, it was a lot of mom and pops that they cracked down on. And the ones that they should have been cracking down are the guys that have the tens of thousands of plants or whatever. Those are the ones that really need to be, lowering the plant counts because, as you guys know, growing cannabis isn't that hard, but growing great or high grade cannabis, that is the challenge, and that's where it becomes very hard. Because I can just chuck seeds outside and whatever Jeff did back in the day as a kid when we didn't know anything. Anybody can do that. But when it comes to really putting out a product that tastes good, smells good, checks all the boxes, that's hard, and it takes time, money, effort, and it's definitely not going to cost $2 a gram. I don't know what kind of deal people be getting these days, but something like that is going to cost a little bit more. And to be honest, I'll pay for that if it's a better product. That there are the cheaper ones. So I wanted to get that information out of the way for everyone. Just before I ask you guys on the panel, your opinions and thoughts on this, because this is a national thing about the oversaturation of plants, and other states are starting to realize that too. Is okay, we need to crack down on this plants thing because Michigan put out a thing saying, okay, we need to do something about the plant counts because this is an issue. So we're going to have to kind of crack down and figure out where to go. So what are your all's thoughts on on this whole overproduction thing? It seems to be a national issue.
Well, Chad, I'll go first. Well, I can only speak from an operator in New Mexico's operating space. So what I
Yeah.
see is a highly oversaturated market due to the fact that, illicit ran wild for a little bit before those two big, large operations were busted, which
Hmm.
eventually drove down the price of the cannabis. Because if you can get it for $300 a pound, why would you go to a legal operator and spend that $500 or that $800 for the outdoor when you can get it for 300? So that's what I was really seeing. Like, you went from $100 ounces, $120 ounces, high grade was 225, good prices, to now you go anywhere in the metro area of Albuquerque and you see signs that say $50 ounces, $8 carts, just insane prices that should be at the Dollar Tree. The Dollar Tree, bro. That was
Yeah,
Dollar General. My bad, Dollar
that's a
General.
good
I'm at
either
Dollar
or.
Tree. Yeah, Dollar
Call it
General.
25 tree.
but that's what I mean from my perspective. That's what I had grasped as looking at the market, especially being a producer. I would never sell my cannabis at all. I would put it into a product because, as far as price point, you would get a better price point on making a product out of your flower than you would as a small producer trying to compete with a larger system that's oversaturated that can get away with selling those pounds for $350 to $500. So you're winning a losing battle. So in my opinion, it's just that it was logical for my company to just deal with byproducts, so that way we could at least capitalize on our dollar per value on our cannabis. Because when you look around, it's very oversaturated, and that's how I could tell the market was heavily oversaturated when I began to see that normally all 200, maybe 180 now dispensaries here, and that the Albuquerque area have prices that say $50 ounces. That is, some of this doesn't even cover production costs. So
Mhm.
it leads me to believe that there are larger companies who are mass producing, overproducing, trying to sell that product to other retailer stores. That's why you see a lot of cross branding and a lot of, the same old, brands who produce that larger amount of flour, especially in the South. I noticed, we're not going to say any names on here, but what I'm seeing in the market is truly an oversaturation when you can sell an ounce for $50. That's
Yeah,
all I got to say
exactly.
about that, Chad.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the unfortunate parts is that the enforcement wasn't there at the beginning. And to be honest, I don't really know if it's going to get better or not. With the way that the bill's written or whatever, because we just don't know. It hasn't been nothing's been really done yet because they're still going. Well, welcome back, Jeff. Or this way. Which way is it? This way. This way. My thing's all backwards or whatever. Um, But no, it is, and you nailed it on the head there. We have enforcement, and to be honest, overproduction isn't our only issue. We have many issues, and that's many things. When you have issues, it's not just going to be one thing. It's going to be many different little things or many big things or whatever, and it all adds up to a singular issue. But you need to fix a bunch of stuff under that to get that issue resolved, which always sucks. But I believe in our state. I love my state, and I think we can do it. And we're on the right path. We're starting to get our message across that we do need to bring these plant counts down. We do need to have it more reasonable. Maybe these places producing this mass product, maybe they'll be more profitable when they're not growing as many plants because they can put out better quality cannabis. I'm not trying to say that they will or whatever, because there can be a micro that grows good cannabis, there can be a micro that grows bad cannabis, same thing as the big guys. It goes both ways for everyone, but you have more chances with less plants. And like I try to tell people this all the time, the scalability of cannabis isn't like any other product. You can't scale it up the same way you would burgers, cell phones, or most other products, or even other agricultural products. There's places in California that shut down because they had millions of square feet canopy or whatever, and they weren't profitable. They were trying to grow mass, product cannabis, and it wasn't good. It was cheap. Well, they found more product, more success growing tulips in that grow facility than growing cannabis. Something that they could spray with whatever the hell they want and make it look all pretty because no one's smoking it. So, that goes down to that. Maybe we'll see better quality once that happens on the market. And of course, we'll see a price adjustment because right now we're going through some adjustments in New Mexico, retails, and to be honest, productions are kind of shutting down at an alarming rate. The last few months, we had a lot shut down here in New Mexico, and it's due to a lot of overproduction of things. And of course, there's going to be people who just made bad mistakes as a business operator. As a business owner, you're going to make mistakes, and some people make very dire mistakes. Actually, I met a guy the other day. We picked up something from him. He was closing his cannabis business, and I was telling him, I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm sorry you shut down." He's like, "Yeah, but I learned from my lessons. I'm going to try again." I was like, "You know what?" And that's what's great about us having those open licenses, because if you mess up, you can try again, huh? He was like, "I never thought of that about that, but yeah, man, that is kind of nice because I have another opportunity to try and to fix the mistakes that I made beforehand, because I'm going to do things totally different." He's like, "I'm not going to do a retail and all kinds of 10 different million different things. I'm going to do one thing and focus on that one thing." I was like, "That's good, brother. You learn from that." Some people can do that, but not everyone. But Jeff, what is your thought process on this whole thing, with the states and the overproduction and stuff?
Yeah, like you were saying, I could only speak from New Mexico, and in New Mexico, it's definitely oversaturated. Bringing that plant count, like I'm sure you mentioned when I left. Sorry, my phone died. Uh, but yeah, bringing that plant count down to the original 8,000 at the maximum tier, 10,000 if they had that extra, they needed that extra, but that would be the most. You know what I mean? It could be done. Um, it needs to be done. Um, yeah, that's my take on it. You know me, Chad. I've been fighting for plant counts for micro businesses, either to go up from 100 to 200 while the Regulation Act was going through, or trying to get at least 400 when everybody else doubled. So yeah, we're still fighting to lower the plant counts.
Jeff,
Yeah,
I think there's
100%.
something wrong with your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Jeff, you sound like a robot. Well, uh, yeah, he's out in Silver, so I get it. It's a hard connection out there anyway. But I was at least able to hear you. Kind of sound a little robotic, but we'll hopefully it'll fix out as we go on through the episode and everything. But yeah, like both of you, we're all pretty much on the same page on this one in particular. That the plant counts go down. Now I've heard some people say, "Well, I don't know why they're worried about the plant count."
Hold
the
on,
best
Chad. That's
What's
not
up?
what I said. I said I know that the market is oversaturated. Yeah,
Okay, my
that's
apologies.
we
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that man. I can't be grouped into that just yet. Because as I heard today, they want legislative acts to be able to lower things like that of the plant count. So I am definitely on board to be a positive voice in helping with that. But there's a lot to be done with that. It's a lot to be done as far as organizing and trying to rally a lot of people to think the same way about lowering the plant count. Um, the way that it was said today at the meeting that we had just went to this morning, it's a little bit more difficult than that. So I see the oversaturation, and I see the oversaturation due to several causes, not just lowering plant count, but also too we have to keep in mind that illicit market. So yeah, um,
Yeah, and all we're
yeah,
going to do to the illicit market is shrink it, like throughout time. And that's with every illicit market. There's one for tobacco and alcohol. Still, but it's so small that we don't even notice it's there. It's still an issue, but it's very small, and that's what we're trying to do with the cannabis thing. And throughout time and figuring this out, we will tackle that illicit market issue. And the route that we've been going ain't it though. With like the overproduction and the lack of enforcement and all kinds of other issues and stuff, but through time, hopefully we can fix a lot of those issues and come together with a consensus, especially with the government. And hopefully through time we can actually deregulate this because like they kind of want to overregulate it and keep overregulating, add more stuff. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's doing the opposite of what you think. Like sometimes overregulations is too much and not good enough. There's a way to run a business and it's not the way you do government. I'm not going to tell you how to run government like a business. Like government runs totally different than a business runs, and business runs totally different than a government runs, or else our government would be a business. So yeah, so it would be a straight up business. So um that's the only thing that I have. Oh, Jeff's joining on another one. Is that the better connection, Jeff?
hopefully, because he was sounding robotic, and I thought
Yeah,
you were
yeah, yeah.
gonna
He
tell
joined
him,
up.
Chad.
There we are. There's Jeff.
Okay, Jeff.
On a
Yeah,
better
man, that was
looking
better,
better and
man.
everything.
Yeah,
Man, I
better
got it.
picture, everything. We can
My
hear you.
my phone died, and my iPad was right here. Yeah, I should have been using it the whole time. Sorry, guys.
Okay,
Oh,
no
no
worries,
worries, man.
Jeff. You
Hey,
sound better. Good.
yeah, you sound way better. You don't sound like Jeff Robot, like the robot version.
Only thing
Jeff,
I heard was lower plant count. I was like, nah, man.
That's all they need to hear is lower the
That's it.
plant
That's
count.
it.
That's all
That's
they
it.
need
That's
to
all he
hear.
has to say. Lower plant count. Like
That's it.
I'm gonna have
lower
to make
the
him
plants.
a shirt, man.
That'll fix everything.
Like you're gonna be the face of that shirt, Jeff. Lower plant count with your face in that hat too, bro. Like one
You
of
got to
those
have him doing the
pop-out heads,
robot thing
man.
though. He has to be
Heck
dancing like a robot.
yeah.
Yeah, the robot needs the hat too. Exactly.
Oh gosh, yeah.
No, yeah, but
Okay.
this is something that every other state is seeing too as well. And coming from reports like this. So we're not the only ones, is what I'm trying to say, that's dealing with it and that sees there's an issue. But certain issues get blamed for everything. You can't blanket coat an issue with one particular thing. You have to look at a bunch of things that cause the issue. Like me, I'm huge for not closing licenses, just for the capitalistic ways, because that's not capitalism when you do that, because that's the government getting involved too much. But that is one issue why. But if you look at overproduction, you can't sell what isn't there. But then if there isn't something there, they'll figure out what to sell. So like, okay, then it goes back to enforcement. So we have to make sure our enforcement's good, because if we lower the plant count and there's not enough, or they're fixing on getting more or whatever, people are just going to find a way, just like they did at the very beginning. Because when we first opened up adult sales, we didn't have enough cannabis. And I told them that for years. I said, we need to open up licenses like a year or two before we go adult use. So that way we have enough cannabis for everybody. Because at the time, we didn't even have enough cannabis for the medical cannabis patients in the state at the time. That was only like 100,000 something at the time. So opening up to millions of people, with worth millions of dollars, that was going to be a mess. And that's where the Oklahoma thing came in. Because I predicted that we were going to run out of cannabis, but we didn't. And that's because the illicit market came in. Don't get me wrong, it kind of saved us, but at the same time, there was a point where we needed to stop it when we caught up, because there was people that were showing up, they got their license the day before sales started, and all of a sudden they had harvests, and I'm like, dude, would you have a 24-hour plant? What the hell? Like that's a
I
little
saw
shady.
some of that. I saw a lot.
Yeah, there was a bunch of that
I
going
seen
on.
a
I was
lot
like,
of that.
whoa. Yeah, I was
Wow.
like, whoa, oh, that's a magical plant. Where'd you get that?
That is
So,
the fastest auto flower in the world, bro.
yes, I actually said that. I was like, well, I want to know where you got that autoflower. Holy shit. That's got to be worth a lot of money, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and I think we need the state is getting ready to do that. They're hopefully almost completing the report for cannabis demand here soon. Is what I hear. I hope it's all factual, because we definitely are in a oversaturation, and hopefully we could get that done. It has to be done.
yeah, 100%. So we'll see what happens. that's pretty much all I have for that conversation. Just just know if you go to a state and you see $50 ounces, you know the reason why now. So, do you guys have anything else before we move on to the next conversation?
No.
Let's get into something fun. Like that was depressing.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
Too many
well,
problems.
That was depressing. $50
I know,
ounces.
I know. Sometimes I gotta do that, but it's newsworthy. So I'm gonna do two quick updates real quick, and then we'll get into our very last topic. But this one is kind of good news for New Mexico, and also however you want to put it. So Texas Legislature, they are sine on their first special session of this year, which means that their special session ended. With that, the reason why that's good for New Mexico is that means nothing changes for us, because if Texas legalizes it, that means we're going to lose out on over half of the money that we're making right now, because that's about how much we're making from Texas. They make up for about half of our sales. The places like Sunland Park will dry up. Jaw, New Mexico will probably hurt, and places that border the Texas area. So that's why I update you guys on this Texas stuff, because the operators around the state, some of them will feel this when this does eventually happen. I don't know when, but one day Texas will legalize that plant. It could be a million years from now. I have no clue, but one day they will, and New Mexico will feel that. So it's important that you guys know that. So the session ended. However, as soon as I got done writing this guide and I was like, okay, I'm good, I saw that they started another second special session about 2 hours after that. So
He
they are
said he's
in
gonna do
another
it
special
over and
session
over.
right now. They're just going to keep doing it over and over. Now, the governor did mention hemp in this special session as well, and what he wants from it. So that is on the agenda. So hemp will be heard again. However, I do believe that the redistricting thing will be in there too, which caused the Texas Democrats to leave state and break quorum. That's why that happened. That's why they did that. Will that happen again? I don't know. If they introduce that legislature that they were doing the last time, I see them doing that again. Will the legislature try to figure out some weird, wonky way to keep them there? I don't know. Maybe. Um, but what I do know is that there is a special session in Texas going on again, 2 hours after the other one ended, or maybe an hour after the other one ended. So now we have to wait again to see what this new bill is going to be, because I'm watching some of the Texas advocates, and it seems that some of the representatives have been listening. I just don't know how well. So this could be big or bad for New Mexico, but at the same time, right now, things don't change for us, and we go on as life. Do you guys have anything on this before we move on to the next little update I want to give?
We definitely will be oversaturated if they do go legal.
Yeah, especially in the El Paso area.
Yeah.
I
They
don't
don't know
want to
what to
think
do
about
with that
that.
product.
I don't want to think about that right now, Chad. Let's go to the fun stuff.
All right, so Trump announces the possibility of a rescheduling thing going on. As you guys know, I've been covering the rescheduling thing the past couple of years. We changed administrations, and that kind of went to a halt. Now, the other day, Trump officially said from his mouth that we're going to be looking into that, and I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks, and we'll see what happens when it comes to government. You never know. So one thing I will say about that is rescheduling is a step, but is it a step in the right direction that we want? I don't know. But it is a step. I just don't know what's going to happen. Like they kind of put it on pause for a while, and most people in his administration were like, "No, we're not going to do anything about it." And to be honest, most of us just said, "Okay, whatever. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing in our respective states. We're fine." And now we're hearing this, so we'll see what happens. He said 2 weeks. Something could happen before. But what we could just see is just the process of rescheduling starting back up again, and them doing the hearings and stuff. So this is good news depending on who you ask, because some people like Schedule 3, and some people hate Schedule 3. I myself think that we need deschedule, and I think this is an opportunity for us to push descheduling at the federal level. If they're going to listen, but it's worth a shot, because we need the descheduling part. The rescheduling thing, it might just cause more confusion, and it'll be good for the medical side and the medical people, but that leaves everybody else in limbo. So that's my update for that. I just wanted to keep that one real quick, because these two were like mentionable, and if I didn't have any other topics, I was gonna talk about these two. But the very last topic I really do want to talk about, because this actually affects most of the nation, to be honest. So do you guys have anything on that?
Well, Chad, I kind of do. When it comes to
Okay.
descheduling and a Schedule 3, it's like, what are the stipulations? Would they allow? Would that interfere or change the interstate commerce law, which bans us from not transporting, cannabis to a different state? Like, say, for instance, we're in New Mexico, and hey, I want to go to Utah. with my cannabis. Would it change along those lines? I'm with you, Chad. Deschedule all the way. It just reminds me of the prohibition age of alcohol. That's how Al Capone made his fortune, from running alcohol. And then next thing you know, fast forward to 2025, I can go to my salon and have wine, and you could do the whole nine. Like, alcohol is everywhere, like it's
Hmm.
everywhere. And it's, I see cannabis one day turning into that blueprint, but I would like to see it descheduled, so that way we can just get away from extra taxes and just being, like you said, confused about a Schedule 3. Like, it's, to me, cannabis is a medicinal plant, it's a healing plant, and you can happen to make money off that healing plant. And now farmers in New Mexico, some of them who have taken advantage of seeing it as a high value crop plant. So, it's a lot of things that you could do with this cannabis, but to see it descheduled would make a big enough effect for me to be like, wow, there's a possibility for, not just New Mexico to get paid, but the entire United States to open up the ventures of international importing and exporting. And, I
Yeah.
see things from that type of level. But the Schedule 3 for me, it's just like, okay, so what do we get from it? What, banking? Does it help
Yeah.
us with
Yeah.
banking? Does it help us with
Mm-mm.
interstate commerce? Like, what does it actually do? You're still saying it's a drug, it's just a less harmful drug, when we
Hmm.
should just deschedule it in general, because it's just a plant. And the rest if you so happen to set it on fire. You know?
And I don't
You
want to
know?
depress you and tell you all the other stuff, but you already know it. So yeah, Schedule 3 is more of a smoke and mirrors kind of situation versus
Yeah.
deschedule. But this is our opportunity to push for the deschedule still, and I still see that within the cannabis industry nationwide, that a bunch of us are pushing for deschedule. It seems like the reschedule is coming from the Chads and Brads. Those types of guys in the industry and everything. Yes, my name is Chad, but that's just my name. So it's coming from the people that aren't of the cannabis community is what I'm seeing. Will it help the medical cannabis patients? Yeah, I'm a medical cannabis holder, and my cannabis will be legal from one state to another, but I don't know what the stipulations are going to be. And to be honest, that's only for medical. That leaves rec and everything in limbo, and only certain things, and you have to deal with the FDA, and you have to deal with HHS, and you have to deal with all these other things. So when it goes to Schedule 3, it might just not be the greatest thing, because when we got the 2018 Farm Bill and we got legal hemp, it just caused more confusion. And now even here in New Mexico, they're looking at, if you add CBD to your regular cannabis product, that's going to be banned. When some people are trying to provide like more of a medicinal kind of part of it. It's like, okay, I'm going to offer a 3-to-1, three CBD ratio to 1 THC ratio, because we don't need to be pushing high THC, because people are trying to get away from that. And they're also throwing up warning signs with high THC. So why not help us and kind of combine both, because it's the same plant. That all they did was just put a definition of a percentage of what THC level makes it hemp or not, but it's the same plant. It grows the same way essentially. That's why hot hemp and THCA became such a thing. So
Yeah,
I
no,
I
that's a
hope that.
great.
Huh.
That's a. I was gonna say that's a great point on combining the two, because that's where we get some of the most of all the minute cannabinoids, like THCV, CBDV, CBG, all that comes
CBN.
from hemp.
Yeah.
And those are all medicinal.
Yeah.
And to combine that with the THC and or legal cannabis market, and make it one thing would eliminate all the confusion. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
we need those
one day we
cannabis.
have to get to that. Yeah, 100%. So the way that we do it is descheduling, and then I wouldn't say eliminating the language in the Farm Bill, but merging them both back together, so that way we can stop this confusion. Because the only reason why the Delta 8 HHC thing became a thing was because cannabis is still illegal. It was a little loophole that they could use to get around it to make money. Which whatever, by all means, capitalistic, but at the same time cause confusion, cause all this other stuff, and now these states are like, pretty much we're on a slippery slope when it comes to cannabis hemp right now, because it's being attacked in a certain way that can attack cannabis itself in the future too. And that's what scares me. So I hope that our government wakes up one day and just deschedules it, and versus going this whole weird route. And because I mean, our neighbors from the north did it already. Like, just come on, guys, we can do better than this. Our citizens deserve better.
Needs to be in the
But do you
hands
guys
of
have anything else?
it
Huh?
needs to be in the hands of the Department of Agriculture.
Oh,
I
yes.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like any other plant, any other food, any other medicine that's organic. Um, yeah, it should not be Schedule 3. It should be back in the hands of the Department of Agriculture.
I agree. Even here in New
Federal
Mexico with our
and
legal
state.
cannabis.
Federal and state. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, New Mexico's Department of Ag already runs our hemp program. Why shouldn't they run the production part of our regular cannabis program? Because it would make more sense in the sense, you know.
Allow
So
natives to grow on their land.
yeah.
put the natives, you know, allow them to grow on their land to profit from this. You just want to give them casinos and alcohol. No, give them access to cannabis and education to grow that cannabis on their federal lands. Let's see that. Let's see that
Yeah.
too.
I want to go visit my friends on the res and go smoke some weed they grew out there, you know, or go to Riadoso and go to the casino and smoke some weed in a little cannabis lounge they got there. That'd be great. You know, because like we used to go up to Riadoso all the time when I was a kid.
Instead of alcohol, a smoking casino.
Yeah, dude.
That'd be lit. You know, that's lit.
At least I won't be as mad when I lose.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not even putting my money
I
in the
won't
machine.
put that extra dollar. You know,
Yeah, I'm not gonna be as mad when I lose $100. And I'm like, ah, shit, that sucks.
No.
But at least I'm not punching anybody after I leave. So, but yeah, that's all I had for that. We're gonna jump down to our last topic today. I know this is a little bit of a long episode. But we had a lot of information to put out this week, and a lot of it kind of just jumped out at me out of nowhere. So this very last conversation we're going to talk about has to deal with our tracking software pretty much nationwide. So BioTrack and Metrc, the two biggest tracking companies in the whole nation, they didn't merge, but essentially they merged. They are working together and they created a new company that's called BT Government. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to take all of their contracts through the government contracts that they have with the states, and that's going to control it. So it's going to be Metrc and BioTrack coming together. And what it sounds like to me is they're going to take their powers that they have and they're just going to combine it to create one entity thing, to create a one system thing. And what that also signals to me is that there might be some push at the federal level too, because they're pushing to be the only one on the federal level eventually. Now, do I think that should be the case? No, that's a monopolization. We should have options. You know, there should be different, you know, systems that we can use, so that way the competition's there and it's fair, because all of us sitting in this room have used BioTrack and we know the woes, the issues that come with that, and you know, being told that if you need extra help, you got to pay. And to be honest, we pay so much to be in this industry in the first place that being told you have to pay more doesn't feel nice. So, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts so far? You know, just hearing that. Now, I got a couple quotes, you know, directly from their website and everything I can read off. But what are your thoughts so far? You know, hearing, you know, essentially a merger happening between those two.
Well, Jeffrey knows I hate BioTrack, so
I know Chad hates BioTrack too.
I come from an IT background. It's a terrible program.
I'm like, it's archaic. I said it's archaic.
Yeah,
Every time
it
freezes on me. And then the fact, you know, with the free version, because like you said, Chad, when this industry is very costly already. So why would we want to spend $450 a month to pay for the paid prescription of BioTrack when we can, well, subscription, excuse me, when you can, you know, do it for free. But here's the catch with the free version. A lot of functions are not on the free version. Like when I had to put all my plants inside the greenhouse digitally, it was like it was the worst thing I've ever done before in my life. I'm not someone that likes BioTrack. So to hear, thank you for that new intel, Chad, that they've merged with Metrc. I can only imagine what this new system is going to look like and function like. So I hope that they can give us free updated software and not cause for us to pay for the update or whatever that they have merged together to do. But I just hope it will not affect the small business owners like ourselves who have to rely on BioTrack to stay compliant in the state. So I'm just hoping that, you know, they come up with something clever and please offer free software or something so we can keep our systems updated and stay compliant.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because you know, like I said, I come from an IT background, and you know, I hated it, but I have designed websites before. I'm not a programmer myself, but I had to do it for school, and I did not like it. But even I could do a better job. And actually, even like InScribe, I made my own type of InScribe for free, you know, just because of my know-how. And I'm like, God, they're charging people obscene amount of money when this is a very, very simple HTML program, meaning I can just use it in the internet browser kind of thing. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And, you know, it's planned obsolete. And I don't like, you know, companies that do that when they plan obsolete things, you know, like pay more and you'll get more options. Like, well, why can't I just get all the options here? Like, what the hell, dude? Like, stop trying to make a program terrible on purpose just to get more money out of me, is what I'm trying to say. And like that's predatory, especially in an industry that it gets predatory stuff on all the time. Like we're the rabbit essentially trying to survive, and there's a bunch of eagles, falcons, and hawks just living by us everywhere. And it's rough out there. So this would help a lot if we could get something that isn't gonna really break the bank. And I do hope that they do provide some free software and some free help, please. Oh God, some free help would be nice, because it's a very flawed system. I'll say that. And I'm only kind of guessing of what it's going to be like once they start implementing this new software. Jeff and I have talked before. If we do go to a new tracking system, the transition is going to be hell. But that's the same thing with any kind of transition. But I'm curious with this one, because Q, have you used Metrc before? Is that what they use in Washington, or is it BioTrack?
It's BioTrack. So
Okay.
I've just been privy to BioTrack. They're in
Lucky
Washington,
you.
Florida, Colorado. That is the system that I've been more familiar with, and like I said, it's archaic. So I
Yeah.
hate BioTrack. I mean, no respect, no disrespect, BioTrack, but I just don't like the system. I don't like you. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like your company. If you want to give us a discount, a micro discount, please feel free to reach out to Jeffrey Castillo or myself so we can get a micro business discount, and maybe we'll change a little people's perspective depending on how your software works. I don't hate the company, I just hate the software.
Yeah, 100%. Like I can love Apple, but hate certain things that they do or certain apps that they have. So we thank BioTrack for being here and offering these services, but at the same time, the program could be a lot better and way more user friendly and not like obviously predatory. Because that app is obviously predatory. It's bad. So call it out where it needs to be called out, and hopefully we get a better program. Or maybe that's the route they're going with this. Maybe we're just thinking so negatively because of the backgrounds of two companies. I've heard not so great things about Metrc, and I've heard not so great things about BioTrack. I've heard people call it biotrash, in the past and everything, especially in the medical days. But maybe they're fixing it. Maybe I'm just being a negative Nancy, and this is going to be the best damn program we ever heard, and I'm going to be sitting here eating my own damn words in about 4 months, which I fucking hope. I hope they come out with a really good program, and I have to say, hey guys, I was wrong, which I have no problem doing, but only if they do the damn right thing. So we'll see, and time will tell.
As long as we still have a free version, because what I've heard is Metrc does not have a free version. I don't even know if it's just New Mexico that has the free version. Not sure, but as long as we have a free version where we're not having to put out of our pockets or out of our business pockets, yeah, that's going to be the thing. From what I heard and you're going to quote some of the from the article, from what I read, was there was not going to be any disruption between either Metrc or BioTrack in its current state, which is good news. Yeah, we'll just have to see what happens and what fruits from this. Me particularly, I don't mind BioTrack free version, because at least I'm not paying for it, and I am 100% trying to be compliant. So I learned to love it. Actually, I mean, it's like one of those games. I don't know. Did you guys ever play that game?
That's Atari. Yeah, you're talking about Atari. 1957 Atari.
Did you ever play that game
with the things that you move back and forth? You're talking about Atari, Jeffrey.
No, there's this game that was called Dope Wars or Drug Wars. It was this. You remember that?
No.
This game that it was all, it was a screen this big. You could pick the city you wanted to go to. You switch a city. You pick up drugs. You switch to a different city. You upload it. It's kind of like playing that. I mean, I'm manifesting to here, manifesting to there. I don't know. It was so
said uploading in video games. First and foremost, you don't even need to upload no more in video games.
It's just as generic as that, but that's what it reminds me of. I got pretty good at that game. I made 1.5 million in 30 days on that game. I was like, yeah.
Talk to me I wish when it gets to San Andreas level, okay, bro? We're using Xbox 360.
I'm a millennial.
San Andreas, Vice, that's it right there.
I'm talking about the 90s version of this stuff,
Bro's talking about
I was like, I have a Series X.
That's an Atari. That's my parents' video game, Atari.
Yeah. Oh man, Jeff, I gotta say, you have way more patience than all of us in the room, man. If you don't mind BioTrack, you got a lot of patience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
man.
I mean, I
So,
just do what I gotta do. If you want to go get that bag and the state says you have to do this, you better learn how to do this. And if you do it more than once a week,
Mhm.
you're gonna learn it. And
yeah.
it's not as hard as everybody. I mean, I help other people, just because it's it's tricky, but it's not impossible to
Oh,
stay
it is. I
compliant.
mean, definitely.
It's a
And with
reporting system. All you got to do is report. That's all you got to
yeah,
do. And if it's
and with
one
Chat
by one to
GPT, it
be
helps.
free, I'll do it. Yeah, ChatGPT created your own.
No, it helps. There's been times where I'm stuck and I ask Chat GPT, I was like, see if it knows, and I'm like, oh shit, it knew. This is
Yeah,
so. There's a tip for operators out there. Ask Chat GPT about BioTrack stuff, and it
write your
might answer it for you.
SOPs.
It might tell
Yeah,
you the truth. It may
it,
tell you the
it
truth,
might.
and it
Yeah,
could be lying. It is
yeah.
AI. Remember, it has no conscience. It doesn't know. Like
It
it'll
just
go pull
it's pulling
something.
off what it was pulling stuff from Reddit and stuff because it showed me the
Go.
links. So I was like, oh,
It'll
okay,
go
cool. At
pull
least it's not
something.
making it up.
Like what?
Yeah, yeah. It pulled it from
Yeah.
like a Reddit. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the steps. I was
Yeah.
all right, cool. But if it was gonna do some other stuff, yeah, I don't trust it for everything. Something like that, it is. But use it at your own discretion, of course. Don't, yeah, it's still a work in progress because
Oh
to
yeah.
be honest, AI these days isn't actually real AI yet. We're still far away from real true AI. This is a step towards it, but
This is a step
it's not
toward the
there.
Terminator movies. That's what this is. This is a step toward the Terminator movies. All the Terminator movies, the Matrix, everything. That's where we're going. We're headed to AI robot right now with Will Smith. That's what we're doing. That's where we're going. Like what,
I can't grow my plants. I know that.
bro?
Oh hell no, it can't.
We'll still be here. We'll still be here. You could
Yes.
We
order
will.
from AI, but you can't. We'll use
Yes.
the grower.
Yeah.
Maybe it could chop down the plants, but as far as like loving the plant and putting that physical human energy in the plant, I wouldn't trust it if a robot grew my cannabis.
Mhm.
I don't think I'd be alive during those times, but yeah, if that happened, that'd be tragedy. Like
No, I
tragedy.
would. I'm with you on that. But before we end, I'm gonna read a couple of quotes from their article just to give people more of an idea of directly from their words. So this one I'm going to read. It says, "We're excited to partner with Metrc to deliver robust compliance solution to state regulators," said Mo. Oh, I'm gonna chop this name up. Afane, general manager of BT government at the time. BioTrack is doubling down on its commercial offerings, bringing new innovations to ERP on its commercial offerings, bringing new innovations to ERP, POS systems, and empower cannabis businesses to thrive. Okay, so we'll see what happens. There's a lot of promises made in that one statement, but we'll see what happens. It seems more or less like they're just trying to kind of merge together to kind of figure out, okay, how can we work together to make this work more seamless? But we'll see. It's one of those things that you can't really predict until it happens. The next one I want to read is going to be BioTrack will expand its focus on commercial cannabis solutions, including ERP and POS platforms, as I said before, while Metrc partnership with BT government will support delivery of regulatory technology to state partners. Um, the regulatory part kind of scares me because I don't want any kind of one entity creating laws for us, because what that does is it ends up them making more money because they can create a certain law like you have to pay for every single label, and now that's in law kind of situation. So that kind of worries me. Like, yeah, you can have a say just like any other business, but it shouldn't be the only say. We should have a say too as operators and people that use this software every day. Just like when a beta software comes out and the people who make it want your feedback on it, that should be the same thing. Okay, our feedback should be this and this, and they should be able to listen to us, and there should be some way that our government be like, hey, the industry says this and this. Is there any way that you guys can do it? Versus them saying, well, the BT government, whatever, wants this, so we're going to do it. And be like, whoa, why? Like you don't want our opinion on this, or like what we think what might happen. Like you guys don't want to know how this is going to affect us. So what is your thought kind of on that, with them wanting to kind of have more of the regulatory side of it?
Yeah, no, I mean that you said it well, and just what you said. We don't need somebody from a big corporation making laws on something that's in our control.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there rooms for negotiation? I mean, as long as I'm a micro business, I want some negotiation. Can we get a discount? If you're going to charge small businesses, you need to look at our budgets. $50 a month. That's how much I'm willing to pay for something like that. You know, like look at, is there room for negotiation? That's what I would ask when it comes to these regulatory approaches. Okay, if you know that you're going to already write this in law and you know, you may consider our opinion. Here's what we would like to do. We would like the small businesses to get some type of a discount, or you know, can we look at this situation differently? There's always a workaround or something that can happen between, you know, who are their main consumers. We are their main consumers. That means we have a voice. So that way, if enough of us band together, we could create a bigger voice that hopefully could, you know, counteract anything that would be detrimental to small business, because I'm currently a small business. And so that's what I care about. Would we have a discount? Would we have an advantage? Would we have a say? Are you just going to do a merge and tell me I got to pay X amount of dollars? Because then that's another fight. That's something else we have to go rally for and sit in a hearing for, because there's going to be a lot of operators who are small business like ourselves who will, you know, definitely want to refuse to pay for a system that we've been paying for the last 3 years, 4 years. I don't even know, 2021, since 2021.
Yeah, you forget counting and everything after a while when it comes to stuff like that. I get it. Or
Yeah.
even, you know, offer like $200 for a whole year. You know, like I'll pay $200 for a whole year. I mean, you know, that's not bad. You know, something reasonable for the micros, because you know we're working on limited money here. You know, we didn't, like, you know, certain states, you know, you had to prove certain millions of dollars of capital. That wasn't the case here. You know,
Right.
like, you know, we're starting out small, which is fine. You know, that's how a lot of businesses start. You know, Walmart didn't start as a huge corporation. You know, the way when it started, it was a little mom and pop shop in Arkansas. So, you know, like that's kind of the style that we want to go here. Is like, yeah, we're going to start small, but help us out. Shit, you know, like we can't afford those certain things yet. You know, we're not like a huge entity, and we're a small business. So I hope that they do listen in the end. And who knows, maybe the state will come up with their own tracking system, or maybe someone else is coming up with their own tracking system. Because, you know, to be honest, there shouldn't be a monopoly. You know, but you know that's kind of what it's looking like because no one else has done it. So until someone else does it, this is kind of what we're left with. So that's all I have for this, you know, for this story and everything, and for the show today. So thank you both so much for joining me. It's been a great conversation. I know we went a lot longer than expected, but we had some great conversations and everything. And to be honest, there's a lot of stuff in here that people can learn from. So thank you, Q, so much for, you know, your, you know, extensive background, you know, with the cannabis industry in a different state. That always helps. And Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming on again and sharing your story and everything, brother. You know, like, you know, you coming from the hemp industry side, you know, really helps us out when it comes to stuff like the regulations and stuff with the hemp and, you know, adding it into THC, because you know directly, you know, what these plants do and this and that, and the same damn plant, you know, like why are we being so weird about the same damn plant? So thank you guys so much, and I look forward more to, you know, seeing what the Micro Alliance does, and you know, the more events you guys have. And speaking of, when's the next event?
Chirp, chirp. Look,
Yeah,
chirp,
not
chirp.
on schedule. We're in our growing season right now. We got to get over.
We just got through throwing an event.
Yeah, we just
Cool.
got through
We
right
just
in
got
the
through
middle
throwing
of
one.
growing.
It
Yeah.
takes planning, and most importantly, it takes a budget and funds to throw these events, and making sure we have the right operators. If anyone is interested in becoming a vendor at our farmers market, please reach out to us. We would love to see some new flowers, some new products. Show us what you got. Show us what craft cannabis can do in New Mexico. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that, Jeff.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. And thank you all for watching this week. I'll be back next week with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Who knows what the hell's going to go on next week? So, yeah, who fucking knows? All right, guys. So I'll see y'all next week. All right.